Superman and Lois, episode 6, Tried and True. It's your boy Icon with some DC TV. DC TV's back, baby. So, in this particular episode, this episode starts in Bizarro world, and I was actually very pleased to see that. But it was very weird. It was a very confusing situation because we were told that Allie in Bizarro world, she's taken over and she controls the entire world. We see a scene where the Bizarro Superman, before he became the Bizarro Superman, he actually did look like regular Kal-El. Like, he looked normal, he looked human. The only difference, I mean, aside from the fact that the newspapers were written backwards and everything was backwards, the sky was red as opposed to being blue. But, you know, he took some sort of inhaler, and I feel like this inhaler has also something to do with, you know, what's going on with Jonathan and the whole minds thing with the inhaler on that end. But then when he sucked up the inhaler, he blew green smoke out of it. So I guess that was like green kryptonite, whereas like green kryptonite, and like I said, it's the reverse. It's Bizarro world, so everything's bizarre. But as he was taking, you know, this inhaler, taking like this substance, that's what was making his skin look the way it was, and it was making him basically like, it was turning him into a corpse, you know, like almost. That's why he ended up looking like the Bizarro, because of the stuff that he was taking. He ends up going to, which I guess is a government facility. He gets into a fight with a bunch of soldiers. He beats all of them up. He ends up going into Allie's office. He snatched the purple necklace from around her neck, and then he flat out killed her. So then, after he kills her, he puts the spaceman suit on, he takes the purple gem, and then he proceeds to go into the mountains, and then that's how he came out on the other side. So there are a lot of questions here. One, why is he wearing the spaceman suit? Two, why did he need the purple pendant in order to get from, you know, his world to our world? How is that even possible? And if he killed the Allie on his Earth, why is he actively trying to kill the one on the current Earth as well? It's like, why would he care that her reverse is, you know, like in our current world, our current timeline? Why would he care that she's trying to take over as well? It's like his motivations and everything doesn't make sense. So then it takes us back to the, you know, to the Fortress of Solitude, where he's talking to Clark. Bizarro was just like, oh, you know, like, I was trying to kill Allie and you stopped me. And then he was like, you were hurting people. He was like, there were always casualties. He was like, you hurt John Henry Irons. And he was like, he tried to hurt me. And I'm just like, yeah, where the black people at? Because John Henry Irons and Natalie weren't in this episode either. And I'm just like, yeah, where the black people at? But you know, he was just like, oh, he was like, you have to do what's necessary and kill Allie, and the two of them got into a fight. But Superman's not gonna do it. But his whole thing now is he just wants to destroy the pendant because Superman feels like it's too powerful. But unfortunately, he still has to get the pendant from the general, and that's where we've hit the roadblock. Because if, you know, like I said, if he feels that the pendant is powering up both himself and the Bizarro, he knows for a fact that the pendant needs to go. So he goes to the general, and when he goes to the general, we're actually at the funeral now. The funeral of the two Superman super soldiers that the Bizarro killed. Like, you know, Clark was there, well, Superman, not Clark. Superman was there at the funeral, and, you know, they gave them like a hero's funeral. They presented arms, you know, they fired the guns off into the air. And then this is when the general turned into a bitch. Because while the general was at the funeral, the wife of, we're going to assume, the blonde girl that died, she walked up to the general, and then she was just like, oh, what are you doing to find the creature responsible for killing my child? And then the general was like, I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am, but we're trying everything that we can. And then she slapped him, and she was just like, you're not trying hard enough. You're a piece of shit. And I was just like, well, damn, lady. Like, I understand you're grieving, but she let him have it. And then he was just like, oh, but ma'am, he's like, I won't rest until I've brought, you know, this creature to justice. And then Clark pulls him over. He's like, oh, by the way, I brought the creature to justice. I have him locked up at the Fortress of Solitude. And then he was just like, why didn't you tell me that you captured him? You just watched me get cursed at for nothing. But he was just like, listen, I need to get information out of him because there may be a bigger threat coming than just him. Like, this might not be the whole story. But in order for me to figure out what the whole story is, he was like, I'm going to need the pendant and I'm going to have to destroy it. And then that's when, you know, the general got upset because he was just like, there you go again with the pendant. Why do you want the pendant so bad? And I'm like, he just said he was trying to destroy it. You know, so he gets mad at that. And then Superman had heard, you know, I guess a cry for help, like in some foreign country. So he took off and he flew away to go, you know, to go help that. And then the general had asked his assistant, he was like, yo, find out where Superman went. So she comes back and she's just like, oh, he just saved a bunch of people somewhere overseas. And then that's when the general got upset upset because he was just like, yo, this mother effer, he's never gonna tell me what he's doing. He's never gonna come clean with me. He's never gonna be like honest or real with me. And then he felt some kind of way. His boss, his general, well, the major, well, I don't know, well, no, general's the highest you can go. So whoever his boss is, she came and she cursed him out, and she called him like a piece of trash, and she said that, he ruined the whole, because she was just like, oh, General Lang, and Superman, like, they were friends, we were working together for years, you're in office for 3 weeks, and you severed that relationship, but they don't know that that's his, that's his father-in-law, but, she was just like, oh, you're gonna get that pale blue son of a bitch, and then she's like, you're gonna repair the relationship with Superman, and then, and then he's at the point now where he's in his feelings. Like, he's upset because he feels like he's doing the best job that he can, and thanks to Superman, like, he's not allowed to be all that he can be. So he acting like a bitch right now. He getting all up in his feelings, and then what he ends up doing is he asked his boss. He said, "Listen," he basically like spilled the beans on him. He was like, "Yo, Superman knows where the Bizarro Superman is, and he's not telling us." And then he was like, "With your permission, I'd like to do something about that." So now, as he's putting those plans into motion, we then go to other characters because the former, well, he's still a general, but the former general, like Lucy's dad, like Lucy and Lana's dad, I called her Lana, Lucy and Lois's dad, he shows up with Lucy. And he has Lucy and Lois actually talk and have a conversation. He said that we're not going to talk about Allie, and it was nice to see Lucy back. He's like, we're not going to talk about Allie. We're going to sit here and we're going to try to mend our family and try to put the pieces back together. So, and for a little bit of, for a while it worked. When they weren't talking about Allie Alston, like the two of them were actually getting together. Like they were getting along. They were smiling. They were laughing. Like Lucy was even talking to Jonathan and Jordan. Apparently she knows a lot about football. And, she ended up going to Jonathan's football game because Jonathan is the starting quarterback now for the football game that's coming on tonight because he's taking the inhaler. More on that in a second. So, that's the thing. And, because of that, because they were bonding over that, Lucy and Lois ended up, it looked like they were on the road to recovery. It looked like they were on the road to repairing their relationship. But then Allie ended up getting brought up again because Lucy's whole thing was she was just like, well, now that there's a reverse world or a bizarre world, the truth about Allie, that she was right this whole time. And Lois's whole thing was like, yeah, but it doesn't change the fact that she's crazy. And then Lucy was like, oh, but even your own partner, confirmed that what Allie says is true. And then Lois was like, yeah, after she drugged her and tried to kill, like she was just like, she was just like, okay, I understand. And I feel this is where Lois made the mistake. Because Lucy even said, she was just like, oh, you can never be wrong. And then all Lois really had to say was, yes, you were 100% correct and I was wrong about the whole reverse world with your other self type thing. She could have admitted that. Like Lois could have did that. And then she could have been like, but despite the fact that I was wrong about that, Allie still drugged my friend Chrissy and forced her to do that thing against her will. So like, that's not okay. But because Lois wasn't willing to give a little, she, then Lucy basically retracted, and then she was just like, I don't know why I'll bother, you'll never change. And then she got up, she got mad, and she walked away. So now that whole relationship is back on the fritz, and we're still waiting to see what happens because the Bizarro Superman is still trying to kill the Allie that's on this planet. Again, Jonathan was taking the inhaler, and then Jordan thought that he had superpowers, but it turns out that he didn't have superpowers because he's taking the inhaler. He uses the inhaler during the football game. He has one of the greatest football games of his life, but it didn't make him feel good on the inside. He legit felt like a fraud. Like, let's just call it spade a spade. He felt like a fraud because it wasn't him that was doing the quarterbacking. He was actually, it was because he had the power because, because he took the inhaler. And then Jordan found out that he was taking the inhaler, and then he got mad and he was disappointed because he was like, I thought you actually had real power. And he was like, I do have power, just not in the way that you think. And then, his eyes lit up again, and they almost fought. The grandfather busted him, put him in the car, and sent him home. So we're not done with this whole thing because even then, the government is looking for people that's taking those inhalers. The kid who was previously taking the inhalers, he ended up getting spoken to by the police. So now Jonathan thinks like he's next now because the first kid got rolled up on it. So now he's like, oh shit, I got to ditch this inhaler. And then that brings us to the Lana. I keep calling them the Lana family. That brings us to the Cushing, the Cortez family because she kicked him out. And she was very right to do so. The way the whole thing went down, I can't even be mad at her. Like, she's 100% correct because she needs time to process this because she has to process the information of what her husband did. And she needs to make a decision if that's something that she can live with going forward. So of course, like he tried to come back and apologize, and then it didn't work. And then she ended up, then Lana ended up talking to Clark about it. Then her and Clark talked about it. And then after that, Lana basically went and, she approached the woman and she had a conversation with the woman. And then she was just like, oh, do you love him? And she was like, I did. And then he was like, did he love you? And then she was like, I don't know. And then, after they had then she had mentioned that in the end, Kyle ended up choosing his family. And then she told him, and she was like, well, when did he break it off? And then she gave him the date she gave her the date of when it got broken off. But then she was just like, oh, that was the day that I think Sarah or the other girl had like broken her arm or fell off a horse or did something of that nature. And then that's when Lana ended up going to Kyle's job. And then she was just like, I need time to think about this. But after I spoke to the girl, it seemed she did say that you were willing to do anything to save your family. But she said, I question whether or not you cared to save your marriage. Because Lana's whole thing was, had our daughter not gotten hurt, would you have stayed or would... I feel like they did that same storyline on Arrow, to be honest with you, because when they were talking about, in season 2, when they were talking about Miss Rogel, the chick that ended up, being the Asian girl that partnered with Slade, that fell in love with Oliver's daddy, she even said that Oliver's dad and her were going to leave, Myra, and they were going to leave the family and everything. They were going to go off and do their own thing. But then Thea fell off a horse and broke her arm. See, that's probably where I got it from. Thea fell off a horse and broke her arm, and then he decided to go back to his family. They basically repeated the same, like the same thing here on Superman and Lois. Because like I said, like Lana felt like because of what happened to their daughter, that's why he stayed. But she was just like, you weren't trying to save your marriage, you were trying to save your family. And then because of that, she was just like, I can't do this, Kyle. She was like, I need to think. She was like, but then she told us, she was just like, oh, you're not welcome in the house. Pick up your belongings when the girls aren't around. I was just like, really? But he got to eat that one because like I said, he fucked up. Like he fucked up, so he got to eat that one. So whatever it takes, he got to make it happen. And then Lana walked away. And I'm like, isn't she running for mayor? Like, is that still happening? Like, she's still running for mayor? Like, I need answers on that because we ain't even talking about the campaign. The mayoral campaign no more. But we'll see what happens with that next week. And then finally, when Clark was at Jonathan's football game, he got a call from the general. He flies back to the general to go see what the general wants, and then he was just like, "Oh, the general was just like, yeah, I'm gonna give you the pendant so you can destroy it." And he was just like, "Yes, general, you're doing the right thing." And he was like, "No, gotcha, bitch." And then he turned on the red lamp lights, like the red sunlights, and then he used red sunlight to weaken Clark. And then Clark was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "I thought we were on the same team." He was just like, "Yeah, you keep saying that, but your actions speak differently," because he in his feelings. And then he said that I've decided. He said that you can't trust me. So I've decided I'm going to no longer trust you. And then that's when the soldiers showed up to try to subdue Clark. But then Clark ended up fighting back. And when Clark was fighting the soldiers, it was literally the exact same fight scene that happened in the beginning of the episode when the Bizarro fought his way through that same hallway to get to Alley. But this time, Superman didn't succeed the way Bizarro Superman succeeded. He ended up the general ended up shooting Superman in the chest with a kryptonite bullet. And, Superman passed out. And now they took him and they locked him up. They've arrested him under treason. They said that that is treason because the general said that he's an enemy of the state. He's an enemy to this country unless he gives up the information about where he's keeping the Bizarro Superman. And if he's keeping the location of the Bizarro Superman a secret, then it's treason and you got to go to jail. And then they were just like, what are we going to do with him, sir? Like, where are we going to put Superman? They actually locked him up in the same cell that they put his brother, Tal-Ro. So now Tal-Ro he's coming back. And that's good for Tal-Ro because like he said in the season finale last year, all he wanted was family. So that was, so that was it. So Superman in jail. Like, Superman's in jail. Jonathan, he's on the drugs and, everything, like everything's turned to complete shit. And that's why I love this show because this show is awesome. Thank you for tuning in. Yo, where the black people at? Like, because it's been 2 episodes since we've seen John Henry Irons and Natalie, when the 2 of them finally do come back, I better see one hell of a steel suit because then it's like, if there's no steel suit, what the hell have they been doing this whole time while the 2 of them haven't been on the show? But I said, but share your thoughts and your questions down below and we will talk about it. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram as always. Let me know what you think about this particular episode of Superman and Lois. Let me know what you think about the, like the whole situation, the whole thing with the Cortez family, the whole thing with Jonathan and his powers, Lucy and Lana, and, everything in between. And Superman now, he's a fugitive. So that's it, guys. So until next week, I'm up and away as always, and about this marriage.